Hey everyone, welcome to this Be Alpha live event. My name is Miguel Quiles. I'm a Sony artisan of imagery, and I've been a YouTuber now for going on almost 8 or 9 years, and have had a lot of experience creating content for myself, different brands. I create content for the Alpha Universe channel for YouTube, so if you haven't checked that out, head over to YouTube afterwards, check out Alpha Universe, and you'll see some of my content there. But I have my own personal YouTube channel that I have been fortunate to be able to grow to over 100,000 subscribers. And so some of you may be subscribed to my channel. Some of you might be kind of curious, how do I go about creating my own YouTube channel? And so that's the goal for today. I want to teach you how to start a YouTube channel and share some tips with you that you can use to help grow your own YouTube channel and grow your own audience. Let's talk about the agenda very briefly so that you have an idea of where I'm going with this class. I want to talk to you all about why YouTube, because I think if you don't understand why YouTube is important, then you may not be motivated to even start your YouTube channel. So I want to share some data with you and share some of my own experience that I think you might find pretty useful. We'll talk about the things you need to do before you start your channel, because there are several things that having been on YouTube now for a while, there are several things that I wish I would have done prior to starting my channel, and I don't want you to fall into those pitfalls. So we'll talk about the things you need to do before you start. Then I'm going to walk you through the process step by step for setting up your YouTube channel. And this was one of those things that is a little bit difficult to show unless you do it. So I have something really excited that I'm going to share when we get to that point. But carrying on, I want to share some ideas, content ideas with you all. Some of you might be interested in starting a YouTube channel, but you're not entirely sure what you want to talk about or what it's going to be about. So I'm going to give you a bunch of different ideas that hopefully will give you something to work off. We'll talk about the elements of a successful video. Now, I have several videos on my own YouTube channel, several videos that I've created for others. I have videos on my channel that have hundreds of thousands, if not a million views. And so I've learned some things as far as the elements of what makes a video successful. So I'm going to share those things with you. We'll talk about shooting video. I'll give you some general tips as far as the gear that you need, settings, things of that nature. We'll talk about music and assets, various assets that you're going to need to be able to create your YouTube videos outside of just the cameras and the lights and the lenses and microphones and the basic stuff. And then we'll wrap up with a Q&A. So I want to try to cover as much as I possibly can to get you started on a good foot. So why YouTube? Digital video is the new window shopping. 80%, and this is according to Google, 80% of shoppers who watched a YouTube video related to a purchase they were planning to make said they watched the video in the beginning of their shopping process. Now, for those of you who, grew up a long time ago, like I grew up as a kid in the 80s and the 90s, and I remember window shopping. I remember going to a store, and before I made any decisions to buy something, I walked around and I looked at the product, and maybe I went to different stores and just kind of got a feel for what was out there. We're in 2021. Obviously, COVID has impacted all of us. So the ability to get out and to see and kind of get a feel for whether or not we want to move forward with something is impacted tremendously. So digital video has become that new window shopping. Before your clients will ever find you, before they ever decide to book you, chances are they're going to go on social media and they're going to look at Instagram and they're going to look at your website. But YouTube is so powerful because you have the ability to put videos up there that are curated, that look polished, that look professional, that make you look more professional than maybe you might be, right? So having the ability to put those videos on YouTube that are a resource for clients or that are even like highlight reels for what you do is something that's super important. We'll talk a little bit more about that here in a few moments. Another thing about YouTube is that 18 to 34-year-olds are watching, and it's a very important demographic for all kinds of industries, including the photography industry. And so according to YouTube, YouTube on mobile alone reaches more people in the US than any TV network. That's pretty mind-boggling to me, the fact that, it used to be that you would have to spend millions of dollars to have an ad on like the Super Bowl, right? Because there were so many people watching the Super Bowl, and they would say, okay, I'm gonna spend a ton of money, put my advertisement, my little 15 seconds, 30 seconds, minute long commercial ahead of the Super Bowl to reach a bunch of people. And nowadays with YouTube, a free platform, you're able to reach more people than what TV networks used to reach, which is really crazy. 1 billion hours of content are watched daily on the platform. 2+ billion users, almost a third of the internet, are on YouTube. 73% of adults in the US use YouTube, which is more than Facebook, which is 69% of American adults, and Instagram, which is 37%. I know many of us as photographers, we probably have Instagram accounts, and we religiously post on there as much as humanly possible because that's a way for us to get our work out there and hopefully find new clientele. But the reality is that more people are on YouTube. So you have the ability, even if you're a photographer and you're thinking, well, YouTube is a video platform and I'm not creating videos, I'm creating photos. There are some really compelling ways that you can share your photography on YouTube and use that to build an audience and hopefully to reach new customers. The other reason why YouTube is that your competition is likely already there. 62% of businesses use YouTube as a channel to post video content. That's according to Social Media Today. 90% of people discover a new brand or product through YouTube. So we kind of talked about that before because it's become the new window shopping. People, before making a decision to buy anything, they'll head over to YouTube, they'll watch review videos, they'll find out what the latest news is on the product or the service that's being offered. And most businesses nowadays are on YouTube. They're utilizing that. So if you're not on YouTube, you're missing out. You're missing out on a big opportunity to be able to reach customers that are being reached and talked to by your competitors. It's not good. So today we're going to talk about getting that kind of in the background because we're going to start our own YouTube channel. It's going to be great. Let's get into it. There are some considerations that you have to make before you start. This happens with most anything. These are the things that when I got into YouTube, I thought about some of them, but I didn't think about all of them. And these are the things that I would do over again if I could. So first thing is your branding, right? This is your channel name, just the identity of your channel. And when we talk about branding, we're talking about things like logos, we're talking about the name itself, the colors that represent your brand. All of those different things kind of give off a certain message to people who are viewing it. And so whatever it is, whatever that channel name is that you decide on, I would sit down, I would write down a bunch of different names or a bunch of different ideas that kind of go along with what I want to do. For those of you who are like me and start a YouTube channel that's based on your name, I would highly recommend, especially if you have a common name like, I don't know, Jim Johnson or something like that. Shout out to Jim Johnson if you're watching. I don't know, I picked a really common name. But if you search YouTube and there's already like a Jim Johnson YouTube channel, you might want to consider doing something else. Maybe you might want to consider coming up with a nickname or something to that effect. Something that when somebody searches it, that they come to your content. If there's like 10 other Jim Johnson YouTube channels out there or Sally Johnson YouTube channels, then it makes it a little difficult for people to find your content. Imagine you meet somebody and you say, yeah, I'm on YouTube, come to my channel. It's just search Jim Johnson. And then they see a whole sea of different YouTube channels that's not yours. That's not good. So make sure that you search the channel name on YouTube, make sure that it's available. From there, you move on to the next step, which is to set up your domain. Part of that process of setting up your domain, you can go to a service like GoDaddy.com. There's a whole bunch of them, oneandone.com. Double check to see if the name that you're trying to create for your YouTube channel is actually available. Preferably a .com as well. If you see there's like, for example, you see this Gear Jutsu logo. This is actually a brand new YouTube channel that I'm about to make right now today for you all live on this class. This new YouTube channel that I'm making is going to be a channel that is specializing in tech reviews. And so Before I was a photographer, before I got into any of that, I used to be big into technology, building computers, things of that nature. Always been a nerd as far as tech is concerned. And this new YouTube channel that I'm making is hopefully going to be an outlet for me to be able to just create that nerdy type of content that I can't put on my YouTube channel because of reasons that we'll talk about. So backing up a little bit. So setting up your domain, the first thing that I did was I wanted to see, could I get gearjutsu.com? Sure enough, I was able to get it. So I purchased the domain name. The next thing you want to do is get a Gmail account and check to see if gearjutsu@gmail.com, or in this case, that's for me, for whatever it is, whatever your business is, whatever the channel is, check to make sure that you can get the Gmail account for that. Because again, if you talk to somebody and let's say you want to share an email address with them, and let's say in this case, Gear Jutsu is my domain and my channel. And maybe I want to use Gmail as my Gmail. It's a little weird for me to be like, oh yeah, you could email me at gear_-- jutsu, you know, like you just want to get it nice and simple. Whatever your channel name is, try to see if the Gmail account that could be associated with it is available before you settle on whatever that channel name is. The next thing you want to do is to check and to get your social media handles, which include your Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, you name it, whatever social media platforms you're going to be on outside of YouTube. Double check to make sure that those social media handles are actually available before you decide on it. So you can already tell we're already just kind of 3 steps in to the things you need to do before you start. And you could kind of see like there's some things you need to do beyond just, let me just start a YouTube channel, right? You want to make sure that your branding's on point, that you can get the domain, that you can get all the social media handles. I say this because for me, like my name is Miguel Quiles, but on social media, I have like a ton of different handles. I have @MiguelQuiles Jr. for Twitter and for Instagram. I have Miguel Quiles Photography for Facebook. My website is miguelquiles.com, not miguelquilesjr.com, because a lot of these domains were not available and a lot of these handles weren't available when I decided to get everything started. So had I known that, maybe I would have done something different. Maybe I would have used my middle initial or something else that would allow me to be able to get all of the different social media handles, domains, emails, all of that good stuff. So didn't do it the first time around. This time around with Gear Jutsu, definitely did that. The next thing you want to do is before you start, get your assets created. So we're talking your logos, your social media artwork, cover art for your Facebook page, things of that nature. If you're not super creative when it comes to that stuff, you can go on websites like Fiverr, find somebody, a freelancer who specializes in creating this stuff and just pay them, give them a framework for what it is that you want, and they'll be able to do that. This logo I actually got created on Fiverr. I think when it was all said and done, it was maybe 30 or 40 bucks. But they sent me all of the assets and it saved me a bunch of time, and it came out better probably than it would have if I would have created it myself. So these are some of the things that you want to consider before you get started. Now let's talk about setting up your channel. And I want to show you this step by step so that you'll know exactly how to go about doing this. So first things first, you want to set up a Google account. So you'll head over to google.com. If you don't already have your Gmail account set up your Gmail account. Once you have that Google account set up, which in this case, I'm doing Gear Jutsu, so I have gearjutsu@gmail.com. Once you have that all set up, you can head over to YouTube and you'll see here on the homepage, top right corner, you'll see it says Miguel Quiles, gearjutsu@gmail.com. And right here, you see this option that says create a channel. And that's what we're gonna select to get the process started of creating this channel. And so from here, how you'll appear, very important. Says by clicking create channel, you agree to their terms of service. Changes made to your name and avatar are visible only on YouTube and not other Google services. So right now it's set up to Miguel Quiles. I'm gonna change it to Gear Jutsu and I'm gonna do create channel. Now, if you have a picture, a logo that you wanna upload, you could totally do it right then and there too. But here we go, Gear Jutsu, no subscribers. You guys are seeing it for the first time, like brand new YouTube channel. That's how easy it is to get your YouTube channel set up. What's really cool about this is that you can upload your videos from a desktop computer. You can upload it from your phone. Now that it's set up, you're kind of ready to go. From here, of course, you could upload your first video, but as you can see, I don't have my artwork set up here. So you are going to want to make sure that when you set up your YouTube channel that you have your artwork set up. If you click on Customize Channel, that will take you over to the YouTube Creator Studio, which you're going to spend quite a bit of time in this area, in this section of YouTube, because it basically gives you all of the information. This is like your command center for your YouTube channel. So you can create channel trailers. You could change the videos that show up for returning subscribers. Basically everything. Everything you're going to do is going to happen here in this channel customization. So banner image and things of that nature. You can see here in branding, you can add a video watermark. So I'm going to set all of this stuff up off screen, but this is it. I mean, this is as easy as it is to set up the YouTube channel. But of course, setting up the YouTube channel, while it's really simple, now it takes you to the next step. So let's get into that. So you have your YouTube channel set up, and now you have to figure out, well, what kind of content am I going to be putting onto YouTube? So I have a couple of different ideas, a bunch of different ideas actually, for things that you can upload. So the first one being behind the scenes footage. Now, for most photographers, this is probably like the most basic type of content that you could put out there. Being able to show people how you operate when you're on set or you're out on location shooting is, number one, it's really interesting content. Like for photographers like myself, for example, if I find another creative or another artist, another photographer whose work I really like, the first thing I'm doing is going onto YouTube, searching their name behind the scenes, right? Because I'm interested to see, how do they work? Especially how do they work compared to the way that I work? Maybe there's things they do, the way they set up their lights or their, stands or whatever. Different things that you can look at that hopefully will give you inspiration as a creative. But for clients, let's say if you're a wedding photographer, posting that behind the scenes video is going to be really interesting for people who are interested in booking you, who want to see, like, how do you operate during a wedding day? If you make a video that has really good music and a good pacing and shows you just working through a wedding like a pro, that's going to give them confidence that when they book you, that you're going to know what you're doing. So behind the scenes footage, that type of content is amazing. Live streams, really easy type of content to create. You can create YouTube channels where, and I've seen these before, where literally all they do is just live stream. They talk about news, they talk about product reviews, all kinds of stuff. Basically, you're almost doing like Instagram Live, where you just go live on the platform and you just talk about whatever. You can answer questions, you can interact with your community once you start to build up a community. But live streams, very easy type of content to create. You could also give business advice. So as photographers, videographers, perhaps there's advice that you could give to the community that people will find helpful. How you retouch your photos, how you choose the gear that you use. I create a lot of business advice on my YouTube channel, and it's a really easy type of content to create. Another one that I think that's really interesting is instructional videos for client use. This is probably the easiest one that I would recommend if you're just starting a YouTube channel and you don't know exactly what you want to do. Creating these instructional videos for your clients is something that everybody should be doing. And I'll give you an example. When I moved to New Jersey, it was a very interesting thing. Maybe some of you guys live in Jersey and you've had this experience, but as I would be in touch with people who are interested in booking me, and I would tell them at some point, yes, my studio's in Denville, New Jersey, they would say, ooh, Jersey. And they're in New York and they're thinking, oh, it's so far. And it's probably like 50 minutes away from the city. I mean, I live in Orlando right now, and 50 minutes, I'm still like just trying to get through downtown traffic in 50 minutes. You can be in a whole nother state, but for some reason, as soon as I would tell any New Yorkers that I was in New Jersey, it was like me telling them I was in like Scandinavia somewhere. It's just weird. So what I ended up doing was I created this instructional video where when people would reach out and they would say, oh, I don't know how to get there, whatever the case might be, I actually have a video that shows them, here's how to get to my studio in Denville, New Jersey, if you're coming from New York. And I shot it vlog style. Here I am in New York City. First things first, I went to Penn Station and I show the New Jersey Transit entrance and going down the escalator. Here's the TV. You want to look for the one that has the little green line. It gives you the track number and gives you the time that the door opens. I literally gave them like the whole step-by-step, show them, you know, what it's like getting down into the trains, picking a seat, until they ultimately ended up in my studio. And honestly, the number of people that would basically say like, oh, that's too far for me, like that just was immediately reduced. People watch the video and they're like, oh, wow, that's a lot easier than I thought. I can use this video and I'm pretty sure I'll get to you without a problem. So maybe your instructional videos might be wardrobe, like what wardrobe to wear to a photo shoot. 5 ways to prepare for your photo shoot, you know, things of that nature. There's an unlimited number of topics that you can create, and all of that can live on your YouTube channel. Creative inspiration is another thing that you can do. You know, obviously creating that type of content could be related a little bit to behind the scenes videos, but creative inspiration is something that could be a lot of fun. Obviously reviews is a huge thing on YouTube because again, we talked about people window shopping quite a bit on YouTube. So reviewing locations, reviewing, for example, if you're a wedding photographer and you shoot at a certain location or a certain venue, giving reviews about what the experience was shooting in those locations, doing product tutorials, how-tos, vlogging about your life as a, you know, entrepreneur, as a photographer, DIY stuff. If you're a crafty person, you know, and you know how to build things, DIY is really great. Makeup and beauty, if you have talent to do that, easy way to make content. And obviously I'm a really stylish guy, maybe not, but you know, some of you are really stylish and maybe style content might be something that could work really well. So this is just a little bit of an idea for what you could do for content. Obviously there's a lot of other ideas out there as well, but I think for most people, you'll fall into one of these categories. Now let's talk about the elements of a successful video. And there's certain things that you want to kind of keep in mind when you're creating content for YouTube. The first thing is your audience. You need to understand who is your audience. And you need to make sure that the content that you're creating is serving whatever the needs are of that audience, whether it be the need for entertainment, the need for information, whatever that need is, you need to make sure that you're really specific about that when you upload your videos. So one of the biggest things that I see as a big kind of stumbling block for a lot of people getting started on YouTube is that they create this content and it's for no one in particular. It's like for themselves. And that's okay sometimes to create content that is just for you, that you're just happy to kind of share with the world. But the reality is that your YouTube channel really needs to serve a specific audience. So for example, my YouTube channel, my audience is photographers at large, but then there's like subcategories that I serve as well. So for example, while I serve photographers as the majority of my audience, right underneath that, I serve portrait photographers because I'm primarily a portrait photographer, even though I shoot other things. But the majority of people that come to my channel, they're probably portrait photographers too. Then underneath that, I serve the needs of people who are looking to shoot with off-camera flash because that's something that I do quite a bit. So you start to kind of niche down over time, but my audience is very specific. It's photographers, and the content that I create is something that hopefully would be of interest to them. Now, I've tried this before. I've created content that is outside of what that audience will be interested in, and those videos did terribly. And I learned my lesson. Like, for example, I thought to myself, you know, I like playing video games. Maybe I should make some content where I'm playing video games and answering questions. And of course, when I put that content on my channel, I had to delete it shortly after because people came to my channel. They're like, what is this? This is Call of Duty. Like, I don't care for video games. And they would unsubscribe, or they would thumb down the video or leave negative comments. And then you realize, okay, my audience does not want to see that. So make sure that you're serving the specific needs of your audience. The next thing is that you want to make sure that you're creating content that keeps viewers' attention. And so this is probably one of the hardest things I think that people struggle with when they're starting out, because YouTube, they look at a metric called average view duration, or AVD. And average view duration is basically how much time, when somebody opens up your video and they start watching, how long do they watch? Now, you're never going to get 100% average view duration. There's always going to be, it's going to be a lower percentage. For some people starting out, maybe it's 20%, 30%. The goal is going to be to get people through at least half of your video. And you might be thinking, half the video? So if it's a 3-minute video, you need to get them to watch for 1.5 minutes, right? And that doesn't seem like much, but when it's averaged across a bunch of different views, you'll see that it's pretty challenging. And even on my channel, I probably average somewhere between 51 to 55% average view duration. But the key is that if you have a higher percentage, then YouTube is going to share your video with more people that are in your audience. So that is how YouTube channels get discovered, and how they grow is to make sure that you have a really high average view duration across the content that you're putting out. Now, the other thing that's really important is that you have to make sure that your videos have an interesting title and that they have a good thumbnail. And that results in what's called CTR, or click-through rate. The click-through rate is basically a metric that YouTube looks at that basically shows, like, every time they show your thumbnail and your title, either on the home page or using any of YouTube's browse features, when you see that thumbnail and title, do you click on it, right? And it's a really important metric. And the goal is going to be that you want to get somewhere between 2 to 10% of the people that see your thumbnail. So say if 100% or 100 people were served that thumbnail on their homepage, the goal is going to be to get 2 to 10 people that actually see it and say, oh, wow, that looks interesting. Let me click on that. The more people that click on it, and the higher your click-through rate is, more people will be served your videos through YouTube's recommendation systems. And it also moves you up in the rankings in search as well. So if you're making a video about something that's kind of a search-related topic, then you have the ability to move up in those rankings if you have a high click-through rate. So these are some of the things that before I make my videos, I'm thinking about, okay, who is the audience for this video? What are some things that I can do to keep people's attention throughout the video? And then of course, what's the title and the thumbnail gonna be? Because if I can't come up with that, I'm probably not gonna record the video at all. Let's talk a little bit about gear, okay? And when it comes to gear, I use a lot of different cameras to shoot my content on YouTube. There's a lot of great cameras in the Sony lineup that, do some really amazing things, but I have a camera for each situation that I might find myself in. So for example, I don't have it on this slide, but right now I'm actually being filmed by my Sony FX9. And then here on this camera angle here on the side that's on the slider, I have the Sony FX3. So here in the studio, these are the two cameras that I use to record a lot of my content because the quality is super clean. And for a broadcast like this, I want to have the best quality. But of course, the FX9 is a big camera. It's a little harder to operate. It's not going to be something that I use every single day, and not if I'm out and about. So that's when you use cameras like the Alpha 7S III. That's probably going to be the next step down from the FX9 for me and my workflow, because it gives you that smaller form factor, but gives you the flip screen, gives you really high quality video. That's going to be kind of my go-to camera whenever I'm shooting out on location somewhere. And then in other scenarios, the ZV-1, the Alpha 7C, these are cameras that are kind of niche as far as what I would use them for in my content creation. My ZV-1, if I'm going out to vlog and I don't want to draw a lot of attention to myself with some big camera with a flip screen and all that, ZV-1 is great. It's inconspicuous. It makes you look almost like you're a tourist, but the quality of the video that you're getting from it is phenomenal. And even the audio that's built in is really good. The Alpha 7C, if you want to have the ability to change out lenses, still has the flip screen, still gives you the ability to be kind of to draw a little bit less attention because the camera's smaller. So these are all great choices if you want to go out and kind of be a little bit stealth about your content creation. The next thing is lenses. When it comes to lenses, I have a bunch of different ones. So the recommendations I'm going to make to you are based off of that. If you want to keep things really nice and easy, if you're shooting with a full frame camera, going with something like the 24-105 is a great option, because that's going to allow you to be able to shoot these like talking head style videos like what you're seeing right now. And you could also kind of zoom in and capture some details in your environment. So it's probably the best lens and the most affordable lens that kind of just does everything. But of course, you know, if you're in low light situations, you're going to need something a little bit faster. So that's when you look at something like the 24G Master, the 35G Master. Those are the two lenses that I'm actually using right now. So main camera right now that you're seeing is the 35G Master that's shot wide open. So you see what the background looks like at f1.4. And then here on the FX3, I have the 24G Master, and that's also shot wide open. So you can kind of get an idea for what that looks like. The combination of these two cameras, those two focal lengths give me a really nice wide shot whenever I'm shooting something, talking head, shooting on location. Great option to do that. And then of course, 16-35G Master is great for low light. Gives you the flexibility to kind of have multiple focal lengths. And of course, the 70-200 is a great option when you're going out, if you're doing travel films, things of that nature, and you want to kind of punch in on the details. 70-200 is a great option for that. Let's talk about audio equipment really briefly. There's a lot of great options out there for audio. The one that I like to use quite a bit is in the bottom right corner, the Sony microphone there. That one is super awesome. If you're shooting vlog content, that's probably going to be like the go-to setup. But again, I have a lot of different microphones that I use for shooting YouTube content. Right above that, you see a shotgun microphone. That's actually what you're hearing right now on this broadcast. It's right off screen here. Shotgun mics are what I use when I'm shooting in a studio and doing this type of talking type of video. And then using recorders to record your audio is something that's really useful. I have a picture of the H4n Pro, but I'm actually using another Zoom product right now, which if you're on the FX3, right here, this is my little Zoom recorder. I believe it's the F6, and I use that to record my audio externally. And then they have these wireless lavalier packs. Rode makes them, Sony makes them. I own both. Both are excellent. These are all great options for capturing audio. Next, let's talk about music and assets, because when you're making your videos, if you want to make them interesting, there's some things you're going to need to be able to accomplish that. So making sure that you don't use copyrighted music and copyrighted assets is like the most important thing, because if you use music that's available on the radio in your YouTube videos, they'll get demonetized. And if you get too many strikes, they'll delete your YouTube channel. So you don't want to use radio music, for lack of a better word. You don't want to use that in your YouTube videos. You want to use what's called royalty-free assets. And there are services like Artlist, Epidemic Sound, and even YouTube themselves have an audio library that you can use where they have tons of music, different genres, different styles that you can use for your YouTube videos. You don't have to worry about getting any type of copyright strikes or anything of that nature. And then sometimes you go out and you shoot a video and you realize that you're missing a certain type of clip. And rather than going out there and spending the time to maybe shoot that type of a clip, you could actually just go to a service like Storyblocks and use their library of B-roll to be able to supplement your videos. So if you're talking, for example, like if you start a video saying, this weekend I went to New York City, and maybe you forgot to shoot a clip of you going to New York City. Go to a website like Storyblocks, you just search New York City, you'll see a bunch of different B-roll clips there that you can use for your videos that show New York City and give people that visual identifier in the video that shows that you were in New York. So these are all of the assets that I use as far as music and as far as B-roll clips, and it's something that you definitely want to make sure that you sign up for some of these services. Artlist, Epidemic, and Storyblocks you pay for. The YouTube audio library is free. So if you're just getting started and you want to dip your toes in the waters, that's definitely the place to go as far as sound effects and music. Next, let's talk about lighting equipment. And this is stuff that you could probably do really well with just having a single light Something like this Aperture 120D was a light that I used for many, many years creating YouTube content. So using something like that and the softbox that's in the top right is very similar to the lighting setup that I actually have right now that's lighting me here in the studio. Of course, I have other practical lights in the background, and I actually have a secondary light that's like high up above that's just giving kind of a separation on me. But realistically, if you just have one light, you should be able to create YouTube content without too much of a problem. But there's all kinds of other lights that you can buy. They have these 1x1 panels, like the top middle light that you see, stuff like the Brotolite Innova Pro, the little light wands, RGB light wands. These are all really cool options to use as accent lights, practical lights in the background. But realistically, just having an Aperture 120D with a softbox, that's like the YouTuber's like starter lighting. And it really will give you a lot of mileage when it comes to content creation. Some additional helpful accessories that you may want to consider. For a lot of my YouTube videos, when I first started, I used to just turn on the camera and start talking. And you could see, like, even in this presentation, I'm not using a script and I'm not using a teleprompter. But I kind of wish I was, because it keeps me a little bit concise and not so wordy. You could actually script your entire video and then have that on an app on your phone. And the top left corner, that's the teleprompter. It basically just goes over the top of your lens, and then you look directly into your camera and you can see the script that basically tells you what to say. They run just a little over $100, really useful. In the top middle, you see a camera slider. I actually have a slider. This shot that you're seeing right now in the FX3, this is on a slider, and I really like it because it just adds that movement to the camera. And it's something that you'll find super useful. At some point, definitely consider getting one. Variable ND filter, top right. If you're gonna shoot outdoors, whether you're shooting vlogs, whatever, variable ND is gonna be really important. So one of the big advantages of something like an FX6 or an FX9 from Sony is that they actually have that variable ND built into the body. But if not, you just have to buy one for the lens and you should be good to go. Buying a gimbal is also highly recommended. If you're going to be shooting out on location and you want to get really nice steady footage, gimbal is going to be able to do that, as is a tripod. I have my cameras right now on tripods. If you're shooting any type of talking head video, tripod is a must. And using an external monitor is something that's really useful. Even if you have, say for example, an Alpha 7S III or an FX9 or an FX3 that has the flippy screen, having an external monitor is super crucial, super clutch, because it's going to allow you to be able to monitor that video as you're recording. So these are all things that are helpful. I put next level stuff because you don't necessarily need it to get started, but it's stuff that if you want to improve your video and your content over time, these are things you should consider. Lastly, let's talk about recommended settings. I shoot all of my content in 4K. I don't necessarily deliver 4K content to YouTube. Oftentimes I'll deliver HD content, but when you have 4K video, it gives you a lot of flexibility when you're in post-production to be able to take that 4K video and squeeze it down to 1080 and make it look better. But it also lets you recompose your framing a little bit if you need to. So I shoot everything in 4K, but you know, if you don't really care to do all that, just shoot it in HD. It's gonna look great. I shoot 24 frames per second to upload all of my videos to YouTube, especially for these talking videos, these real-time videos. They're shot in 24 frames per second. If I shoot any slow motion footage, that's gonna be at either 60 or 120 frames per second. Sony cameras have a feature called slow and quick, where it actually will record in those slow motion frame rates, and the video's already slowed down when you play it back in the camera, which is super helpful. Your shutter speed is going to be double whatever the frame rate is that you select. So if you're shooting at that 24 frames per second setting, your shutter speed should be twice that. So 1/148th would be ideal, but most cameras don't have 1/148th of a second. So you're going to choose 1/50th of a second for your shutter speed. If you're at 60 frames per second, you should be at 1/120. In most cases, 1/125. Whatever the next highest shutter speed is, that's what you want to be, but it needs to be at least double. And you want to set your camera to its base ISO. So depending on what type of picture profiles you're using, you may be able to shoot, if you're not using a picture profile, at ISO 100, or you might be at ISO 640 or 800 or 3200, just depends on what camera you're using. But whatever the base ISO is, that's going to give you the cleanest result. And then you're going to control your aperture, or you're going to control your exposure using your aperture. So the ISO and the shutter speed are already kind of locked in. So your aperture is what's actually going to control your exposure. If you want to shoot wide open in daylight scenarios, that's when that neutral density filter comes in. I actually have a video on Alpha Universe's YouTube channel that talks about all of this, so I won't go too deep into it. Go check that out after this class. And then you want to manually set your white balance. These are things that really simple. This will help you to be able to get the best looking video straight out of the box, whether you're using your phone or you're using an Alpha series camera or any camera in general. These are the settings I typically use. All right, and we have arrived at the end. What questions do you guys have? I'm ready.
One. Here we go.
Hi, everyone. I'm Christopher Robinson from Alpha Universe and the Alpha Universe podcast. And I'm here today at Be Alpha Live with Sony artisan Miguel Quiles and YouTuber Miguel Quiles. Miguel, thanks for being here with us live today.
So happy to be here with you guys. Good to see you too.
Always a real pleasure to see you. That was a really comprehensive program you put together for us. And we're here live taking questions now. Please feel free to put your questions in the chat for Miguel. And I want to kick this session off, Miguel, by talking a little bit about gear and the importance of like some of the extra gear for a YouTuber. And what I'm talking about is, you know, in your presentation, you go over a lot of the real essential bits of gear. But one thing I'm especially interested in is things like a slider that you show yourself using quite a bit, and how important something like that is when you're getting started, or if it's just, you know, a matter of get out and use what you got.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's kind of twofold. Obviously, in the beginning, resources may not be as they will be in the future. And so there's no reason to not create content with what you have. So if all you have is a cell phone, create that content, you know, get it out there. Understand that in the beginning, as you're creating content, you're probably not going to have as many people watching. So it's a good time to be able to experiment and try different things. And, you know, I think it's understandable if the quality is not to the maximum potential, because I don't think anyone really, outside of maybe a handful of content creators out there, start off creating content with the very best gear and all the accessories and all these different things. I know I certainly didn't. You can go back on my own YouTube channel and see from, you know, 2012, the kind of videos that I was making and the quality or lack thereof in those videos. But what getting some of these other products and just better gear does for you in the future is that it improves your production quality, for one. But, you know, things like the slider, for example, which you mentioned, what it really helps you to do is to really keep your content really concise and well produced. So what I mean by that is, let's say if I'm making a video and I'm talking to you about this bottle of water, and I'm like, you know, this bottle of water is really amazing. It's, what is it again? Right there, when I say, what is it again? I would cut that and I would go to my B camera, right? And I would say, okay, it's great value water. Great value water. And then when you see the edit, you see it as one continuous shot where it's like, okay, here's camera A and Miguel is talking, and then it goes to camera B, and then I just pick up, and that middle part where I mess up is trimmed out. Things like that, when you're starting out, you don't really get to do. It's just like, most of the time it's one long take and you just kind of say what you're going to say, and there might be a lot of filler in there. And because of that, the content may not do as well as it could. But again, you get started with where you're at. And if you have the opportunity to get better equipment, it's going to tighten up your production, and it's going to make you look more polished and just a better content creator overall.
And I think there's an argument to be made for, you know, it's okay to start with more of a, you know, kind of a raw look to your stuff, and then as you get more sophisticated gear that you can make some of those fixes with, that, you know, it just kind of gradually over time becomes, you know, more polished. You don't necessarily have to start in with everything super polished if you're not really at that level yet.
Absolutely. I mean, I know a lot of other, you know, content creators on the platform. You know, I'm friends with several that, you know, their videos, even to this day, they're not shooting the most beautiful looking videos, but they get a lot of views and they get shared, and the content does really well, and their channel overall is healthy and it does well. So, you know, I think there is something to be said for, you know, the content being raw as far as the presentation style. But I think, you know, you have to keep your audience in mind. You know, who is it that's watching your videos, and why are they watching your videos? And if you understand why they're watching it and you speak to whatever that need is that they have, then the presentation doesn't matter as much. You don't necessarily have to be in 4K or in 8K. It could be HD quality off of your smartphone, and it's good enough so long as the content itself is helpful, and not just helpful, but entertaining, or whatever the need is, whatever the goal is of your channel. If you're meeting that need, then it matters a little bit less. But if you can get better, you know, better quality video, better quality audio, getting multiple angles, it's going to help you in post-production, and it just helps you to make better videos in time.
I think it's a really great point. And, you know, kind of sticking with some of this hardware theme for a minute, we got a question from Jeremy Chambers. Do you set your lenses, such as your 35 GM, to manual focus? Mine does a lot of focus breathing. And how do you set your lenses?
Yeah, that's a good question. Back in the day, I used to have a stand-in dummy. It was like a mannequin head that I bought off of Amazon, and I would literally figure out, okay, if I'm, like, say this is my framing, I would put the mannequin in the spot where I'm going to sit, and I would pre-focus, and I would pull the mannequin out after I hit record and just sit, you know, do my video. These days, with the cameras that I'm using, pretty much all of the newer Alpha series cameras, so we're talking, you know, Alpha R4, Alpha 7S3, you know, FX3, FX6, FX9, they all have eye autofocus. So what I end up doing is I set up wide area for the coverage, I set up eye autofocus, and I set it up in continuous. And basically the camera just tracks you the entire time you're filming. So the focus breathing, these are things that honestly, like, I don't see it that much. And I don't think that if your content is good and it's entertaining and it's informative and it's all the things that you try to achieve in your videos, I don't think that people care if there's focus breathing, unless it's like a constant throughout your video where it's kind of like, I can't pay attention to you because it's like, it's just, the breathing is just overwhelming. But I don't think people care if they see, like, you know, you're talking and you're moving and there's just like a moment where it focus breathes. I don't think people are worried so much about that. So I would say worry less about that in the long run, and just kind of focus on making sure the content is good. But if you have it in wide area, continuous autofocus, eye autofocus engaged, you can see it throughout my videos and also the videos that I make for Alpha Universe. That is literally the exact setup that I use. And, you know, to me, it looks great.
Yeah, and if you're having problems with your setup, and if you are getting a little bit of hunting, if it's happening a lot where you really notice it is becoming objectionable, I mean, a really easy solution is just to go to manual, you know, get yourself enough, enough depth of field, and you can really alleviate all those problems pretty simply if you have some sort of a challenging situation.
Exactly. Totally agree.
We got a question about the software that you use, especially for exporting at a lower bit rate or resolution. What do you export with?
So right now I'm using Adobe Premiere for all of my editing and also for rendering or exporting my videos. And I tend to do them all in 4K. Even if I shoot the videos in 4K, I bring them into Premiere, and at times I'll either export it in 4K, but if I have it shot in 4K, I can export it in HD as well. But, you know, that's for me. I'm a PC user. You know, I know a lot of people that edit in Final Cut. Personally, for me, I'm hoping over the next few months to make the transition over to DaVinci Resolve, just because it's a little bit more robust as far as color grading and things like that. But you know, to be honest with you, you can edit videos on your cell phone. You can edit them on an iPad. You know, any software that you can get familiar with, you can get your videos cut up and you can get them exported and get them to look their very best.
You know, Miguel, you had such an awesome, comprehensive presentation there. We actually only have time for a couple more questions. And I'm really interested to know what the most important piece of gear you think an aspiring YouTuber should have is. I'm talking about once we get past those basics. We're talking about some of the more sophisticated elements that you want to add to your workflow as you move forward. What's like what would be your next one after the most essential pieces?
You know, your audio is huge. And I think that there's a lot of times where people don't pay as much attention to audio. So I would say having the option of having some sort of external audio to be able to capture like insane quality audio is really important. Obviously, the cameras that I'm using, these Alpha Series cameras, produce killer quality video. On the audio side of things, what I'll end up doing is I have a shotgun microphone and I have an external recorder. And I think those are probably the two first things that I would look to purchase if I wanted to kind of upgrade the overall production of my videos, is making sure that the audio is good. Because most people can watch a video that isn't the best video quality, but has good audio. But if you have awesome, like 50K footage and the audio's just absolute trash, people can't watch that. So I would say the audio is definitely the next big thing, and it could be a shotgun microphone with an external recorder, and that'll go a long way.
That's a great answer, and certainly a great piece of gear for someone to have. Really, totally agree that, you know, bad audio becomes unwatchable.
Oh yeah.
Unfortunately, we are out of time. Like I said, that was such a great presentation. I want to remind everybody that they should go ahead and subscribe to Miguel's channels, follow him on his socials. He is also super responsive. I promised him before that we would put him on the spot and say he'll answer questions directly if you reach out to him. Miguel, thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me. Enjoy the rest of the show.
And thanks everyone for joining us here at Be Alpha Live.